As the debate continues over what to do about the humanitarian crisis at our southern border, we've invited Sergio Martín, who is the head of mission in Mexico for Doctors Without Borders, to discuss what he's seen in these border town communities. Welcome to Face the Nation.
Thank you, Margaret.
Now, you have served and helped people in war zones, in Yemen, in Congo, really all around the world. How does that compare to what you're seeing with this migrant crisis now?
Yeah. For me, it's the first time I'm working in Mexico, indeed, and I was not expecting the level of violence and the level of needs I can see in Mexico. In fact, I have been working in war zones in Congo, in Africa, and Middle East, and I have never seen, I had never thought, I would say, that I will find this level of needs here in Mexico. In migration, concretely, we are working throughout the country. We are working in the south and also in the northern border of Mexico, in the U.S. border. And the level of needs in mental health, the level of violence some of these people are suffering can be compared, that's clear, with some war zones in Africa, that's clear.
The majority of migrants coming across the U.S. border are from the three countries of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. They've sometimes trekked by foot across multiple countries before they get to the U.S. What is that experience like? What happens to people on this journey?
Yeah, we need to take into account that most of these people have already suffered a number of violent years before leaving and are already suffering violence before leaving their countries. It's not a light decision. It's not a decision you will take overnight. So for them, it's already a very hard step. So they are leaving their countries. They are crossing into Mexico. We have a border, near to the border, to the southern border attention point. Is 50 miles, Tenosique, 50 miles to the Guatemalan border, more or less, and we are already finding there a high number of migrants that have been suffering violence already in Mexico. And after that, you have still 3,000, the whole country to cross, to arrive to the northern border, where you are exposed to rape, you are exposed to robbery, you are exposed to kidnapping, extortion, and then you arrive to the north, and then you think you just need to cross. And then you're crossing, and now you might be returned back to Mexico, in fact. We need to know that some of the regions in the northern Mexico are very dangerous places. In Tamaulipas state, where we are working, that's the border with Texas, indeed, is classified 4 in travel advisory for the U.S. government. It's the same level as Afghanistan or other war zones, right?
The U.S. says basically don't travel there.
Don't travel there. Don't travel there. That's clear. And the U.S. government, at the same time, that is not allowing civil servants for the U.S. or is recommending not traveling there, is putting people, and thousands of them, in these towns.
This is the so-called Remain in Mexico policy you're talking about. The Trump administration has decided, rather than house so many of these migrants in U.S. detention facilities, to push about 40,000 of these asylum claimants back into Mexican territory as they wait to be processed. This was supposed to be a solution, but you're saying it has its own problems.
It has a lot of problems. I mean, it's putting people in danger, it's putting and pushing people to risk their lives. It's not a safe area, Tamaulipas, and you have a lot of the northern Mexican borders. They are not safe places. We have 85% of our patients in Nuevo Laredo, that's the border with Laredo, Texas. They are reporting to have been suffering an act of violence, more than half of them in Mexico already. We had, in May, almost a third of our patients in Nuevo Laredo had been suffering a kidnapping in the recent times. That's 2 weeks prior to the consultation in Nuevo Laredo. Migrants are sent to a very dangerous place and are put in a very dangerous place. Mexican authorities, Mexican government has no capacity to deal with such amount of people. There is nothing for them. They're just left in the streets. They have nothing really to do. They have no way to go. There are very few shelters, not enough, and they're privately run with a very, very few means. And a lot of these people are just staying in the streets. We are talking about towns that are controlled by organized crime. And migration and migrants are just part of the business. They are kidnapped, they are extortion, their families in the US or in the countries of origin are extortion too. So, I mean, the policy is really putting people in danger. It's not that this is a solution, but calling it migrant protection protocol while you're putting people in these risky areas, I mean, it's not human, that's clear.
So you're faulting the Mexican government, you're faulting the US government, the home governments of the people, the countries they're fleeing from. Who is responsible for all these people?
Yeah, there is a situation in the region that's clear, and people are leaving everything they have behind. And I want to be clear on that. It's not an easy decision. So there are reasons, and obviously there are reasons in the countries of origin. But once they left, they are not treated with humanity. They are having the consequences of policies in the US policies and the Mexican policies on migration that are just putting them in danger, that are just putting at risk, that are confronting them to more violence. So it's not a question of, and for us it's not a question to say what to do to the governments, that's clear, but what we witness is not only the traditional migration, risky migration path where you had actions from the governments to deter this migration, right? So people will try to avoid migration patrols or authorities, and they will go underground, they will take more risky roads to arrive, and this will expose them to criminal gangs, to violence. It's not only that. Now, what we see is directly this US policy, taking people and putting them in these dangerous places, is directly placing people in front of the violence.
The CDC said this week that there's a mumps outbreak at some of the US detention facilities, that the migrants who are coming across have carried some of this disease into these US detention facilities. What are some of the afflictions you're seeing? Is this common? I mean, what are the health problems people arriving with?
No. Health problems we witness are linked to the road first. I mean, they are walking for many hours a day, so we see wounds in the feet, skin diseases, respiratory infections, nothing to do with previous conditions. There is no epidemiological difference between Central America and Mexico, and there is no reason, and there are many studies talking about that are saying that migrants will say that migrants are bringing any disease that is not here already, right? So what we see is mainly linked to the road, and what we see also on top of these physical problems linked to the road and the difficult way is the consequence of the violence they are suffering, and that we are witnessing.
The psychological impact.
Psychological and physical. So we're talking also about sexual violence, about robberies, violence. We have a center in Mexico City for extreme cases of violence. 95% of our patients there, we are bringing there the most extreme cases, torture, extreme violence. 95% of them, they are under medication for mental health issues provoked by the violence. A lot of them in origin, a lot of them also on the road. So this is what we witness and this is what we see.
All right, Sergio, thank you for telling us what you were seeing and the reality of it.